Welcome to Good Screenwriting. I'm Trevor Meyer, and this week we'll be answering the question, what is your process for trimming the fat off of your script? Now, first thing to note here is that you should start with a strong outline, because if you don't have too much material to begin with, then trimming fat is not going to be a huge issue, okay? So when you're going into it, you need to make sure that everything that you put into it is absolutely essential. Now, a good example of this, believe it or not, is The Fellowship of the Ring. Not Return of the King, The Fellowship of the Ring. Fellowship of the Ring, you might be thinking, oh my god, this movie's like 2.5 hours long, almost 3 hours long. How is that a good example of trimming fat in a script? Well, have you seen the book? Okay. The only way that they could have made this film any shorter is by cutting out characters, okay? Cutting out characters and not developing relationships among the characters, okay? So they could have cut out Arwen, but doing so would have been one of the only female characters in the movie. And really, to do justice to the book, if they had the license to do so, and we were working with some filmmakers here who actually had some juice behind them, some people who had actually done some stuff, they had proven that they could do the work on a small scale, and then they gave them something like this. I mean, honestly, nobody was ever going to do Lord of the Rings with no credentials going in, okay? So the first step is to make sure you're removing all of the unnecessary characters, all of the unnecessary relationships among the characters, and keep it as tight as possible in that way. Now, once you've done that, you basically got to go through every single scene in the script and cut out anything at all that is not absolutely necessary for the audience's understanding of plot or character. Now, The Hobbit was terrible with this, I'm sorry to say. It's not a terrible movie, but it was terrible in this regard. It had a lot of backstory, a lot of character building, quote unquote, character building conversations that you could have cut out completely and understood exactly what was going on. Now, some people will draw the distinction between plot and character in this sense, and there's not really that big of a difference, okay? It's really necessary and unnecessary, because even with character growth, there are certain things you need to know. So there are certain elements of character growth that are essential and have to be there. If you cut them out, the growth makes no sense, okay? So it's all about what's necessary and what's not necessary in a script. So if you're writing something that has to be under a certain page count, for example, if you're new to the business and you've never had a script produced before, you're going to have to stay within the 90 to 120 range, okay? You probably don't want to go shorter than 90 unless you're doing an independent film, which there are independent films out there that are shorter than an hour and a half long, and that can work. But as far as getting something actually produced in the studio world, you want it to be from 90 to 120. If it's longer than 120, that's really where we're going to be talking about this question about reducing the page count. So if you're over 120, again, you got to cut out the least important characters. Again, don't cut out your star, don't cut out the love interest or the mentor or any, pivotal, especially not the villain. Don't ever cut out the villain. You need the villain. But find your least important characters and get rid of them. Just don't have them in there to begin with. And that'll save you a lot of space, a lot of time. And once you've already done that, when you say, I really can't get rid of any more characters, then look at the character goals, the character relationships, and see if you can consolidate them in a way. In other words, if you have 10 people, all with different goals, they all want to do something different, it's a mess. That's Spider-Man 3, that's Amazing Spider-Man 2, that's X-Men The Last Stand. That's terrible. It's messy and it's unorganized and it forces you into bad writing corners, okay? But if you have, say, 10 characters with one goal, everything makes sense because wherever the protagonist is going, the others are going with them. and they're trying to accomplish the same thing. Now, that doesn't mean that they all have the same motivation. Why they're doing it can change. So, for example, you might say, oh my God, this movie has, 9 members of the Fellowship of the Ring, right? There are 9 people in this picture. Yeah, well, there's that guy in the background, but he's not one of them. But there are 9 members of the Fellowship of the Ring. So how do you consolidate all of their scenes? They're always together. They're always trying to accomplish the same goal. Now, they have different reasons for their goal. For example, most of them want to destroy it, but Boromir actually wants to keep it and use it. And I would make the argument, actually, that Boromir is the antagonist of the Fellowship of the Ring, being that overall, it's probably Sauron, but it's debatable whether you could even count Sauron as a character, because he's not, I don't know if he's actually played by an actor, if he has any dialogue, it doesn't really count. But I would say the biggest obstacle, the biggest person who is an obstacle that Frodo faces in the Fellowship of the Ring is actually Boromir. So his motivation is different from the rest of them, but a lot of them want to destroy it. Why do they want to destroy the ring? They have different reasons. The hobbits want to protect the Shire. Gandalf wants peace in Middle-earth. Aragorn, well, he's got his whole, Return of the King thing going on. And Legolas seems to just want to preserve the balance of life, as, elves tend to do. So they all have different reasons for wanting to destroy the ring, but they all want to destroy the ring. That consolidates their goals, and it becomes them versus the forces of Sauron. And when you do that, the number of scenes almost doesn't change at all, because any scene that Frodo's in, the others come with him. So then it's just a matter of character growth and character change. So you got to show what they were like before, you got to show a reason for their change, and you got to show them after. It's a 3-step process. It's a little more complicated than that, but that's beyond the scope of this question. So once you do that, you go back and watch The Fellowship of the Ring. That thing is cut to the bone. There is nothing unnecessary in that movie. It's like 99% lean. It's like when you buy turkey or something like that, 99% lean Lord of the Rings. There's maybe just a little bit, like at the beginning when they're having Bilbo's birthday party, that could have been trimmed. But I have a feeling they got this movie as short as they possibly could by cutting out every single unnecessary word, every unnecessary beat, every unnecessary sentence that these characters speak. If it's not absolutely crucial to the understanding of the story, they cut it out. Now, they kind of cut loose a little bit later on. By the time we get to Return of the King, they're pretty leisurely with their, pacing, and arguably you could have cut out a lot more from that movie, and especially from The Hobbit. The Hobbit could have been an hour shorter, the first one, An Unexpected Journey. So that's really it, to get it down to under 120. If you're new at this, start by eliminating your least important characters, then consolidate the goals of the other characters, reduce the number of relationships you explore among the characters, and then cut out every single line of dialogue, every word of dialogue that is not absolutely essential for getting your point across. Okay? You got to do what you got to do. Keep cutting until you get down under 120. That's it for this week. Leave your comments in the section below. This is Good Screenwriting, and I'm Trevor Meyer. See you next time.